My name is Amy Arcan. I'm the Executive Director of the Corcoran Neighborhood Organization in South Minneapolis. And we pulled together this meeting today with leaders from across the city. We had 57 neighborhoods as of this morning sign on. We got word of the City Council's proposal to cut neighborhood funding on Wednesday evening. So we didn't, despite the snowstorm and the short time frame, I think that, you know, the turnout today is good. I know it would have been better had we had more time and not such bad weather conditions. But essentially what's happened is that the city is going to be looking at a proposal on Monday evening to cut neighborhood funding from phase 2, which will have a severe impact on neighborhoods across the city. The University of Minnesota, if you haven't seen them, their maps that are up on the wall they do a nice job of illustrating what the impact will be by neighborhood.
Okay, what do you expect to accomplish today?
Well, what we're hoping to accomplish today is simply just to begin a conversation with our legislators, because in order for these proposals to go through, they're going to need legislative support. And so we want to start that dialogue. We want them to put pressure on the city of Minneapolis and the elected officials there to say that they're not going to take up this issue at the legislature. Coming out today, I can't believe you got here. I think there would have been a lot more people had we not gotten almost 2 feet of snow, but we're doing the best that we can. And I was my co-worker Eric Gustafson, who helped put this meeting together, is out in New York, and he called me this morning and said, you know, the Metrodome's going to collapse, and there's 18 inches of snow, and we're still going to have our meeting. And so I think one thing I just do want to comment on is that the Minneapolis Parks did an amazing job to get us here today. I got a call from this region's park director, Peter Yeager, and he used to be the director here at Corcoran Park, and got the call from him this morning saying, the lot is plowed, but I'm not going to guarantee the sidewalk. So I literally came over here a couple hours before this and was going to have my shovel out and found the entire walkway to be perfectly cleared. So that was great. And thank you all for getting here. So and there's a couple of other things we want to thank everyone for showing up and the passion. I mean, we found out about this issue on Wednesday evening, late afternoon.
I'm sorry, for those of us that don't know you,
Yeah.
introduction.
Oh, I'm sorry. You forget the obvious.
Starting the meeting is fine to recognize the person, and thank you for doing it, although the school board's entire complex is cleaned out like a baby's rear end.
Is it?
If we're looking for a place to cut back on property tax assessments.
Well, I'm Amy Arcan. I'm the Executive Director of the Corcoran Neighborhood Organization, and we're in the Corcoran neighborhood. My co-worker Eric Gustafson and I started talking with Senator Torres Ray and asked her if she would help us pull together a meeting today with our legislators in response to the city's proposal that they're going to hear on Monday night. So we all of you in this room worked really hard over a few days to get here and to scramble to figure things out. You'll notice some of the maps around on the wall. Jeff Mattson from Cura at the University of Minnesota is really to be thanked to try to visualize some of the impacts that these cuts are going to have to us. So he dropped these off, I think, about 9 o'clock on Friday night for me at my house. So thank Cura staff as well. And then everybody else who organized on this issue. There was leaders from across the city. I mean, we said we wanted to put together a letter, which is on the back of your agenda, and we wanted to ask our lawmakers at the state to help us understand this and help us with these cuts. And we put out a call to neighborhoods, and within 23 hours, we got 50 neighborhoods to sign on to that letter. And since then, 7 additional ones have. So that's pretty quick. And I know Senator Torres Ray, we want to do a quick bit of introductions too. I know that Senator Torres Ray was great in helping us with people at the Capitol and just willing to pull together, as always, as you always are for us, to pull people together into a public forum to discuss these types of issues. And we fully intend that this isn't going to be the last discussion on this issue, but rather probably the first. It's going to be a difficult year for us, and that we hope that we can kind of take a proactive approach to some of these and work with our legislators to ensure that neighborhoods continue to be funded into the future. So should we get a little bit of who's here? Okay. So can you raise your hand or make some noise if you're from Northeast Minneapolis? You have some, one person. All right. All right. Well, thank you for representing Northeast. How about from North Minneapolis?
That's right.
What about Southeast Minneapolis? That's you? All right.
We're southeast.
And, well, Southeast and South, yeah, that's, how about South Minneapolis? All right. And what about downtown? Do you have anyone from downtown? Okay. And what about Southwest? Southwest. Great. And how many of you, can you stand up? I know, did you guys get this when you came in? The kind of, this map here that tells how much each neighborhood is going to be losing. Can you stand up if your neighborhood is going to lose more than $450,000? All right, now stand up if your neighborhood is going to lose more than $290,000. How about $160,000? How about more than $88,000? And more than $30,000? So, we're all going to lose quite a bit of money. We just wanted to kind of get that across to begin with. And Senator, would you like to introduce yourself and your colleagues?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Amy, I just really appreciate this opportunity. The timing is just complicated for all of us, so I really appreciate that you're here. Amy is correct. I decided to really work with you very closely to make sure that you're involved in this process, because this is the beginning of it. I am sorry, but we're going to be cutting a lot of funding from multiple programs, the schools, parks, everywhere. We have a $6 billion deficit that we need to correct by May. So it's a very challenging time for all of us, and we need your help. We need to figure out how do we do this in a very transparent way and in a way that will not harm our most vulnerable communities, low-income communities, in a way that is collective. We need to come together to put together a plan that works for all of us, meaning the schools, the parks, the neighborhoods. And I think that we have a lot of brilliant people who have worked very hard to put ideas forward. And many times, many of us don't even know what those ideas are. And so I want us to be proactive. I want us to make sure that we come together and figure out what are the challenges that we're facing, what are the proposed solutions. I really want us to talk about solutions, not just the problems, because we're going to be inundated with letters, emails, calls from you about please do not cut this program. Obviously, we don't want to do that, but we're going to have to make some tough decisions. So please help us in this process, and this is what this meeting is about, and it's not the first one. We're going to have ongoing meetings. My promise to you is that every time you call with a proactive effort to bring the community together, to explain and put transparency into the process, I am in. And I will collaborate with you to bring this to the rest of the community. And with us are Senator Linda Higgins from North Minneapolis, Senator Ken Kilash, who represents a portion of Minneapolis, Ridgefield, and to the north of Minneapolis. And Representative Joe Mullery, who represents North Minneapolis as well.
Thank you. So, oh, yeah.
One of the things that I noticed sitting here is I'm currently the chair of the NRP Policy Board. There are a lot of current and former policy board members in the audience, and I would like them to stand up because we're the people that approve all your neighborhood plans and stuff. Could you just stand up so we can acknowledge that you're here?
Oh, yeah.
And you talk about it? And Bob Miller, our director, is also here. So, Bob?
So I'm going to turn it over to Mark Hines. Mark offered to give a brief overview. Oh, Karen.
Representative Kahn.
So you're just in time. We were just introducing who was here, so if you'd like to just give a brief.
Representative Phyllis.
Representative Phyllis Kahn.
We were just getting done with introductions. I know your glasses are probably still fogged up and everything else, but if you wouldn't mind saying who you are and which part of the city you represent.
Sure. Karen Clark. I represent District 61A, which is right Phillips neighborhood, Stevens Square, and Whittier neighborhood. And one of the snowiest spots, although we got over here, and I have to say. We had a meeting yesterday, maybe you've already heard, but the House did, and all of us got stuck going home. So glad to be here today. Really happy to be here.
Phyllis Kahn, and my neighborhood is all of Southeast and a Cedar Riverside and a teeny bit of Northeast and a teeny bit of downtown.
So Mark Hines, oh, hi Carol, you were on the policy board as well. Is, sorry.
I am. It still exists.
She got us, and her husband got us here in the truck, so we're grateful to Carol and Brad.
She called me this morning and says, if I have to go over there and drag everyone myself with this truck, we're going to get there. So thank you. So Mark is the director at the Lindale Neighborhood Association and lives in Kingfield, and he agreed to give a little bit of kind of the overview of what has happened, and we're going to give it the short version. So thanks, Mark.
Thank you very much, Amy. Amy and Eric did a really fantastic job working with Senator Torres Wright in pulling this together on a short notice. I'm sure a lot of you were like I was on Tuesday morning, where an email floated through and said, you might want to look at the Star Tribune, there's something going on with neighborhood funding. And you pull it up, and this came literally out of nowhere. And so what Amy had asked me to do is to do a very short historical version so everyone understands how we all ended up here today. So I'm going to actually just start in 2007. I'm not going to go back, and if anyone wants to hear the long history, Bob can go all the way back to the super long history, as a lot of other people in this room can. Back in 2007, the city on its own decided to do a community participation kind of program, and out of that came the 3-track process, which people might remember hearing that term. And so the first one was internal city stuff. The second was creating a task force to develop a report. That task force report led to the city's principles for community engagement and a number of other things. And the third and the really important part coming out of that was the NRP working group. And that involved a couple of council members, mayor's aide, Bob was the NRP representative, and that group really developed a lot of what led to here. And that was a very controversial process. And that's one thing I like to remind people is that just because something has passed, and I know our legislators understand that, just because something has passed does not mean that it was universally loved. But coming out of that process, there were a couple of things that were really important. So there was the city developed its framework for the future. And that framework for the future laid out that they would create a new neighborhood community engagement, community relations department. They created a new neighborhood community engagement commission. I am actually the District 6 representative. I see Jeff Strand back there, who's actually an appointee. I don't think Ken Marcia is here, who's also an elected representative on that. So they created a commission, they created a new department, and had started that negotiating with NRP about how do we transition all of this over. They also in there laid out that they thought that there should be 3 programs to support neighborhoods going forward. And one of the things that the city said in there, and I think it's really important that everyone understands this, is that supporting neighborhood organizations is a core city service. So what the city council said when they did that is they said the same way that plowing today is, and public safety and fire, that engaging their citizens is a core part of what a city is supposed to do. And I don't think that we should forget that when we're sitting here looking at all of this. So they created these 3 programs. They created a commission to go forward and do those. They started working with NRP on how do you do an orderly transition, because when you have 20 years of programs and you have contracts and you have all of that laid out, you can't just, well, you shouldn't just stop one day and move everything over the next day. There also was, and there was a group, and there's a lot of folks in here who really worked with a number of legislators to get legislation passed in 2008. And that legislation in 2008 said that the city gave the city the power to use the TIF districts to fund both target center stuff and neighborhood revitalization purposes. And so they actually had identified a funding source for this for the next 10 years. So this is, a long process that's been going over the last few years. I remember I was served on the policy board during that time, and we have made a recommendation that we thought there should at least be $12 to $14 million a year to fund neighborhood programs. The NCEC, a year ago, when the city was looking at how much of the TIF districts should it actually put out there, the NCEC thought it should be 100%, and that we also agreed with that $12 to $13 million a year range. The mayor's budget in 2009, he had $8 million just going out to neighborhoods. Then that has started to come down. So the mayor originally had proposed using 75% of the district. That started to come down how much, so in his last budget he had put out 50%, and so that was $5.1 million for neighborhoods to fund those 3 programs. So you notice that things have been kind of shrinking. So the idea that neighborhoods haven't been feeling any of this budget pain is ludicrous. We've been watching our resources get smaller and smaller and smaller over the last few years, and one of the things that we're going to lose this coming year is, for years we had through CPED, we'd had small little contracts to do community engagement. So they had a development project, we would go do that. A lot of neighborhoods got $2,000, but that was still $300,000 for neighborhood stuff that just is gone this coming year. And we knew that was coming, so we've been feeling this pain going forward. And so everything's been going forward. The NCEC had put out a new, our new program that the council actually approved on Friday. There's money in there for 2011 for that going forward. I know, just as one of the commissioners who went out, we went out and did, I think, and Jeff can correct me, but I think around 80 public meetings over the last year as we've been developing these new programs. And in every one of those meetings, the one question we got was, so how is this going to impact our phase 1 and phase 2? And our response, based on city policy from the mayor on down, was it won't. We're not going to touch phase 1 or phase 2. Those programs are going to run. So literally at 80 plus public meetings, we got up in front of a room of people and said, we're not going to touch your phase 1 or phase 2, because that was what we were told by the city council was city policy. So what happens then is Tuesday, out of nowhere comes this proposal. And I don't know if you've all had a chance to actually look at the proposal or not. I think that Amy actually has a letter that Bob had put out that actually details the changes very well about what had changed in it. The very first proposal was essentially that all NRP would be frozen, and that the city would seek legislative action to just roll NRP into the new department. Now, for anyone who's been following this, Bob and David Rubidar, who's the head of the NCR department, they've been working for about 2 years now on orderly transition. This completely would upend that process and just throw them right together. It also would have suspended any expenditures until legislative action had happened. So when you look at, I know, like I was looking at Lindale, we're we're right in the middle on our phase 2 plan, and we're looking at, well, maybe we have money, maybe we don't have money, and maybe I have money, but I can't touch it for 6 or 7 months. Which then, how do you pay, mortgage on your building? How do you pay your rent? How do you pay your staff? How do you do your programs? So completely upended everything. Everyone got very worked up, called their council members, and from what we could see and what I heard is there was only a small group that came forward with this proposal, and that the vast majority of the council had no idea this was coming until Tuesday morning in the paper, which I think also took all of us by dramatic surprise, that instead of this idea of we're going to have transparent conversation, we're going to work with you, we're going to figure things out, it was just out of nowhere. It's like, no, we're just going to throw all away 30 years worth of work. On Wednesday, they approved the proposal and ended up in a spot that is still very problematic and creates winners and losers among different neighborhood organizations, which is something that we have all tried in this room to avoid for a long time. Because one of the things that I always say is that someone who lives in Phillips or someone who lives in Kenwood deserves to be engaged in the city equally. It takes different resources to engage them and they have different needs, but everyone in the city deserves to be engaged. And what this would do is it would essentially take, and for neighborhoods that don't have, so 2011 goes forward, they're asking you as our legislators to change, to give the city approval, to take all of the NRP stuff and flip it over into the new department. And what they would do then is they would take unallocated phase 2 funds and use those to fund the new city programs in 2012 and 2013. There's nothing in the resolution that provides any commitment to that in 2014 that they're going to go back and use TIF or not. They're talking about only using 50% of what they certified. So if you're keeping track out there, it actually ends up to be 25% of the total TIF capacity. So sometimes the 50%, it's 50% of 50% is what they're talking about. So it would be, in a lot of ways, it would be devastating for neighborhoods. And one of the concerns that we have, and you'll hear a lot about these going forward, is one, there's been a principle on this that NRP funds are NRP funds and that you don't mess with them. But this would literally take funds from some neighborhoods to pay for programming in other neighborhoods. And I know I personally have a big problem with that. You're going to hear a lot more about it, but I wanted to just do that as a quick overview for how we all ended up here. And there's a lot of people in this room that will be happy to talk with anyone if they have other questions and walk through the minutia of it. But there's a lot of acronyms out here. There's a lot of money from a lot of different spots. But this is something the city knew was coming. The city had, when they approved the TIF districts last year, they knew that this would have an impact on property taxes. Last June, when the city council approved spending up to 100% of phase 2 funds for neighborhoods, they knew that this was going to have an impact. So we've all been operating under a set of assumptions based on trust for 3 years about where we were going to be, and all of that got completely upended this last week.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, Jeff. You made it through the snow. Do you want to give yourself a quick introduction?
Sure. My name is Jeff Hayden. I am a state representative. I represent District 61B, which is just a little bit to the west of here, loosely kind of Cedar to the other side of the freeway, and Lake Street to 50th, and I poke out all parts in between. But glad to be here. Know many of these faces in the room. My kind of process in becoming a legislator, I started out working on neighborhood issues just like you guys. I was a volunteer in the Powderhorn Park neighborhood, and I was the chair of their board for, 3 or 4 years before I went on to work for Councilmember Schiff, and then went on and did nonprofit stuff, and then I was elected in 2008. So I'm glad, once again, to continue to see great neighborhood activists that care about this city that are here. I know that we are in tough and difficult times, and I think my colleagues have probably already shared with you. I see some of our great members here. So I want us to be able, I guess my message to you is that we need to talk about this particular issue and what happened and why and what's the citizen engagement process and what's the right way to go. But I want us to do that under the backdrop of we are in very, very difficult times, and I think all of us know that. And so as we kind of fight and work our way through this particular process, I do want to do that to say that at some particular point in time, we're going to have to figure it out. We can't do, obviously, every single thing that we would want to do, at least in the foreseeable future because of our budget deficit and the layout of our legislature. So I hope that as we work and fight and we work together and we work through this, that we also come together and figure out how do we work and live and support each other, because I think that most of the time we'll probably agree, and there's going to be times in which we don't agree, and we most certainly don't agree with the process. Last thing I'll say is I am a huge fan of civic and citizen participation. I think that it is very important. I think that once we do that and we have an open and transparent process, everybody gets the information, and not everybody leaves happy, but at least everybody leaves heard, and I think that's important. Thank you.
We also, I noticed Cam Gordon came in, Minneapolis City Council, Ward 2. And Annie Young and Liz Walensky are here as well from Minneapolis. So,
He's the only one that's fighting for us.
He is.
Yes, we were all here.
thank you.
And we have at least one more.
Gail, sorry. Gail Bundle is here as well. Another Northeast. Okay, so the next person who's going to give is Marin McDonald, and she's with the Harrison, it lives in the Harrison neighborhood, and she wants to give just a little bit of an impact. You want to come up and thank you for doing this at the last minute. She was told this morning that she would be speaking. Oh, and Elizabeth Glidden just walked in as well. Minneapolis City Council, 8th Ward.
So first and foremost, I just want to thank everybody for coming out on such a cold day. I will leave my jacket on because it's freezing. Second of all, I just want to say once again, I am Mara McDonald, the president of the Harrison Neighborhood Association. That's in North Minneapolis for those who don't know. Sorry, it's in North Minneapolis for those who don't know Harrison Neighborhood. We have 4,000 residents in our neighborhood alone, and we are a multicultural neighborhood. And so what's going on right now, in North Minneapolis, we're going to be hurt more than the benefit from this. And I just want to stop before I say anything else. We will lose $350,000 in the Harrison neighborhood alone. And the benefit, if this goes forward, will be $14. That's what our residents will look forward to, the benefit. So we're talking about people who have housing programs. We're talking about loans for people who have existing houses. So it's kind of hard to talk to people about paying a little bit more for a property tax when they're going to lose their houses because they may not have money to keep their roofs on or things like this. So we're losing a lot in North Minneapolis. And our focus in Harrison is to promote racial and economic equity. These maps show that the outcome is not equitable. There are clear losers and clear winners. And I don't know if everybody can see this map, but these are the losers right here. Okay, so in our area, we will gain $14 to $24. That's a cab ride for most people. That's what we stand to benefit from if this happens. But we will lose $350,000 if you take for our program.
Just from your neighborhood.
Just from our neighborhood. That's not even saying near north. We're not even going down to the Camden area. Everybody's going to lose between $200,000 and $100,000. We're talking about $3 million on the north side. Now, this is the area that's hit the hardest. These are the areas that are going to benefit right now. Okay, once again, there are clear-cut winners and clear-cut losers. And this is not by accident. It was designed this way. We have a lot of historical events to support this, but maps seem to be the theme. And if I can get your attention over here, this is a 1934 map. I love this map. And for those who don't know, it'll show right here in North Minneapolis, this is the Negro section, okay? And for those who know, this is South Side. This is Gold Coast right here. So this is what we're talking about despairing right now, and I don't feel that this is any type of economic justice for the North Side. And this has been going on for a long time.
Slums.
Yep, slums.
Yeah, that's where you live. Phyllis lives in the slums now.
Yeah, thank you, Higgins. So, and, you know, if you look at it, like I said, there are clear losers and clear winners. This doesn't happen by accident. The property tax savings in Southwest and other affluent areas will come from us, the North Siders, basically. And this is not by accident. It's designed this way. North Minneapolis is marked as a Negro slum area. That's what I said. And it seems to people who live there, work there, and play there every day, it seems like people want to keep us that way, and we're tired, you know. And so this is how we feel. If the city council is willing to hurt our communities this way again, what's going to happen at the state level? So representatives and senators, I need you fighting for my family, my children, and my community. And I thank you for your time today. Thanks.
I just got a text from Representative Bobby Joe Champion who wanted to be here, but he lives in the area there that he hasn't gotten plowed out yet. So he wanted to do salutations, and he lives
In the north side,
on the north side and in Lynn Park when they tried to suburbanize the north park and the north side. So he can't get out yet, but he did want to make sure that I sent that note to you.
Thank you. I have a question before we go any farther. Is this proposal based on the city getting full LGA funding? Or is this based, is the budget that maybe Elizabeth knows, the budget that you're working on now, is it based on full LGA or is it based on a more reasonable expectation?
The budget has incorporated what they call a Plan B. And so there would be a resolution that we pass along with the budget that specifically says what will be all the things that will come out of the budget should we go down in LGA. So while, so yes, it incorporates being able to frankly reduce $22 million more dollars in LGA, because we know that's what we actually got last year, which is different than the certified amount.
So this proposal is part of what would
A
be
package,
Plan
yeah.
A, the full package before the 22 million possibility of cutting? Or is this one of the ideas that we cut with LGA is some number less than?
Really neither.
It's
The
separate.
2011 budget is separate. This is for 2012 and 2013. This is to address future potential concerns. 2011 budget doesn't have anything to do with it.
Is that what you wanted to add, Kahn?
Yeah, I want to make that very clear. For those of you who think that this is being, if you think this is about 2011, it's not. This proposal is a staff direction. It is not a budget amendment. So it's a staff direction that's attached to that budget amendment. It has no impact at all on the 2011 property tax. So it's a setup more for the future.
But could I just, a clarification, but it does affect the neighborhoods right now, going forward. So so it's immediate effect on the neighborhoods, but a delayed effect on the property tax.
That's absolutely the case.
Okay, so next, we wanted to just kind of go into hearing some reactions from our state lawmakers. We have a few questions. We can stick to these. You can add in other questions or things along those lines that you have from us. But really, I'd like to hear kind of what was your reaction when you heard about this? What additional questions do you have for us? And what steps can you help us with between now and Monday's hearing? As well as how can we collectively work together after Monday?
I'm Ken Kielash. I'm the current chair of the NRP Policy Board. For over 10 years, I served as a labor representative on the NRP Policy Board, so I've watched it grow and change for the last, I don't know how many years I've been on it, Bob, in the 90s anyway. So one of the things that having the city go after NRP funds is not new. It's been done by past mayors, it's been done by past city councils, and some of that has been reached. This is the first time that I can recall that we've ever been ambushed, and that's what this is an ambush. This is not something, in the last year, we've passed in the policy board cooperation agreements to work with the NCR. They have not delivered on any of their promises, or very little of what they promised to do. The other thing is that the NRP currently has 6 staff members handling, I believe it's about $7.5 million worth of contracts a year. The NCR has 12 people listed as working for them. Now, there's a huge amount of inefficiency going on in that, and when you look at trying to take money out of the neighborhoods to support a duplicate program, it makes no sense. The neighborhoods have consistently delivered participation to the city anytime there's a meeting that the city wants to have and have participation at. When the Neighborhoods Association and the NRP puts it together, we have a great turnout. Too many of the city's neighborhood outreach show there's more staff than there's people there. So that's a couple of things. The other thing is that the policy board is a joint powers agreement, and that means that the money, when the TIF district was set up in the first place and the legislature said it had to be spent through neighborhood action plans, and if the city chose to do this, that meant that the city, county, the library board, the school board, and the park board were giving up those funds to do neighborhood revitalization. It did not mean that it was city money, that continued to go in the coffers of the city. So I'm going to be looking, and we're going to be looking at the legality of trying to say we're going to freeze this money. The city is the fiscal agent. That means that they just write the checks that are approved by the policy board, the programs that are done by the policy board and the neighborhood associations. And yes, the city also has the ability to send those plans back to us, but I don't believe they have the authority to take the money away. So that's a couple of things that we're looking at. The other thing is that what the city, I think that's been missed in this, is that the neighborhoods have leveraged over $1 billion with the funds so far in economic development and outside sources on top of it. It's something the city would have an incredibly tough time to do. So it's been a good program for the city currently, and it still works in that way. So we're bringing economic development. The other thing is that a lot of neighborhoods have used some of their sources to pay for police, for more security, for a lot of things that the city wants. So it's not like this has been confrontational until I think at this time. This is where it's really, this is really no longer trying to cooperate. This is about, taking a stab at NRP and saying that it doesn't deserve to exist anymore because they supposedly have come up with something better, which, if you look at the track record, they've come up with nothing that I can tell. Dave Rubidor has been asked to come to the policy boards as we work through the merging process and we talk about it. The thing is that when I became chair in February, I invited him to come to every meeting. He has not. What I have also done is I said, we're going to cooperate with this, and as you get ready with the program, we're ready to turn over when we see that you're capable of handling. They have no capacity to deal with neighborhood action plans at this point. They have no capacity to deal with all the contracts that the NRP is currently working on. So we're talking about taking a competent organization with a track record, shutting it down and turning this over to the city that has absolutely no track record and is incredibly more top-heavy in management than anything that we've had. And, that's just a waste of taxpayers' money. So I wanted to get that on the table first. And we have a policy board meeting a week from Monday. And we're going to be discussing all of this, our reaction to it. But, literally the city council and this budget proposal was an ambush. It was not, what do you think about doing this? It was not, what can we do about this? We need to have some cooperation with funding to help get through this crisis. Nothing. No dialogue, nothing. So this is not open communications between the two organizations that were agreed by the city council and by the NRP policy board to work together. So I wanted to get that out on the table for everybody.
Who else can we get your reaction when you heard it? Senator Torsby? I can't just say Senator today.
Thank you. Amy, I have to say that I am in a similar situation. A lot of what Senator Kilash just expressed has been expressed by many, many constituents in my district who were very surprised. That is the reason I really decided that it was time for us to get together and really talk about this. I have to say, I am very appreciative to Councilwoman Elizabeth Glidden. She has called me 3 times and has gone over this information in a way that really helped me understand kind of, at least from her perspective, how things are happening in the city. So, Elizabeth, I really appreciate that you called me. The same thing for Sandy Calvin-Roy. Part of the problem for us as legislators, I think Ken was very clear on that, and I would like to echo some of these comments. Ultimately, we're going to have to make this decision and help the city move a proposal forward that it is a solid proposal. And if we don't know, then we're in a very tough place. If we don't know how this works, then I presume that we're not going to be able to collaborate in a meaningful way with the city. So I think what I would like to say today is that I would like to continue to engage in this process of opening these for discussion so that we can learn about how this process works, when these decisions are being made, and how are they being proposed. As some of you probably know, I was in the Senate, I was the member that was approached to work on this TIF proposal that was introduced 2 years ago. In 2 years, I have not received a call, a proactive call to say, what are we going to do? I knew this was going to happen now. But no one has called me to say, okay, Senator, we really want our neighborhood associations funded. Where do we go from here? The city has, contributed taxes to the metropolitan area in ways that many citizens do not know, and we need to put a reform to it. We're going to lose a lot of funding for our schools, and we need to have a more proactive way of figuring out strategies for the future because we have more needs and fewer resources. So I think for me, I want to be a partner with city council members. I want to be a partner with the mayor. I want to be a partner with all of you because ultimately I think we have the same goals. But what I cannot do is propose a solution and be a partner 2 days before a decision is being made. We have 2 years. I have 2 years to work on this. And I would like to sit down in an open forum and say, where can we go from here? The city's going to lose money. We have less taxes. So what is our plan? And I just cannot do it 1 day before the decision is made. I don't know how to do that. Scott Dibble is here. So that's from my perspective.
Stuck on the mic, sorry.
Thanks for coming. Imagine that. Did you want to go next? We're just at this part of the agenda here. Just reactions from lawmakers. I'll let you.
There are big changes ahead at the legislature. We have the Republicans in control of both House and Senate, and the new people chairing the tax committees that have never chaired anything before, as far as I can tell. I don't have any sense at all of whether the chairs are even lukewarm in their support of TIF at all. I know that many legislators are not. And the programs are, the organizations are funded through TIF. And we need to also keep an eye out as legislators, maybe get more of a sense that, I don't know who's going to be on the tax committee, God knows I'm not, and find out whether this is even a tool that will be available to us in the near future.
Do you want to, who's next? Anyone else want to give kind of your reaction to what you thought when you heard,
Well, I'll say something. I mean, we probably all do want to say something. I was appalled. I was just shocked, actually. First of all, I got a call, thank goodness, from Carol Pass, who's one of our representatives on the board. And so what I understood and what I still understand is what was talked about earlier by Marion, which is just this disproportionate impact on low-income people, people of color, the kind of racial and economic injustice that I just can't believe our city really would totally support. And so I'm very concerned about that. I know legislators, most of us don't support that. None of the people here, but we are, as I think was indicated earlier, we're in a different situation in the legislature this year. Democrats are not in control, and I think this is like a great hot button for the Republicans to push and try to divide and conquer us more than ever. And I just think we have to be really smart about how we unite, and I hope our city council members will all be part of this. I think they need to be, and our mayor. I've had some informal discussions with some people in the mayor's office. Nothing formal. We didn't, of course, didn't get any more notice, than the head of the NRP board. I did immediately when I got notified. It was very timely. It was during the time the discussion was going on, and I both emailed and left a phone message for my two city council members, Robert Lilligren and Gary Schiff. Now, unless I missed it on some sort of email, I've had no response back. But I basically expressed my my great distress at what I understood was happening, and asked to let's look at alternatives. When I talked in an informal way with somebody I ran into in Seward Co-op from the mayor's office, I just said, "Do you mind talking to me about this?" And we talked a bit, and the topic just turned to, "Well, then you tell us where we take the money." And I said, "Well, okay, let's have that kind of conversation, but we need to have the chance to do that." And I won't go into the details of that discussion, but I just would say that I think the people who proposed that as an alternative should talk about what other options were on the table. Were there any other options? This just seems like such a destruction of a neighborhood engagement process. I'm just appalled, and I'm just frustrated, and I hope that we turn the corner, and I'm glad there's some city council members here who can maybe help us do that. Representative Mallory?
I guess, to start off with, for those of you that don't know, I've been on about 10 years, the legislative representative of the only one until Ken got elected to the Senate, on the NRP policy board, and I guess I've been through a whole lot of fights with the city that surprised us, surprised legislators on what basically cutting back on NRP commitment, and it's just been on, and then they surprise with sudden bills over there that we haven't been consulted on. It's not a very good relationship that I see that's been used by the city with at least a lot of us in the legislature that care about this. We find out what they've been proposed, and they've already been lobbying it over there sometimes before they tell those of us in the city delegation. So I'm not too surprised that that's what's happened. I think it's probably, I don't understand this quite what's going on, if it's 12 and 13 budget, whether or not that's beyond the technical joint powers agreement or not. If it's not beyond that, I think it's an illegal action, and I think the freezing now is unquestionably illegal. Because we're still under that. And so I think the city would lose in court if they persist in this, and I think the city doing these kinds of things does not. Believe me, I try to cross both sides, and so I try to, ever since I got there, I've gone out to dinner a lot with Republicans, and they kind of wonder what the city is doing a lot of times by surprising us and different things within this. Greg Davids, it's going to be hard to read him. I think probably he's not going to be, knowing him, I don't know that he'll be very gung-ho on the city going back on things like this, but I think the suburban Republicans may be actually the power behind that chairmanship, and I don't know the Senate at all on that kind of an issue. But I think it's improper, and I think it's illegal for it right now. But that's for an attorney to look into. I think it's really incredibly bad practice when we see who the council member is that introduced it and where the money is coming from. It's pretty surprising that they'd even
try to pull something like that to me, but, those of us in the legislature, we're probably appalled by the procedure, but sometimes in conference committee, things like that will happen at the legislature too, so, being realistic. I think that the two things are, I think it's probably illegal right now, and I hope we can work out something, and that the city will work with us. It's amazing to take an action like this without working with us at all, and when they can't do anything without our going along with it and working it. I've always preached that the city should work with the legislative delegation more and not just pop ideas on us. It's the same way with bonding projects, everything. They go along their own way and usually pop them on us and say, do what we want, rather than us working together on things.
Senator Dibble, would you like to give?
I'm State Senator Scott Dibble. I represent District 60, which is part of downtown and neighborhoods around the southwest corner of the city. I disagree with Joe to some degree. I don't think the city council does not work with us, and I think they do work with us to develop our bonding program and the like. And I want to acknowledge that the city council is and the mayor are struggling with a phenomenal property tax increase issue. Probably been all over all of that, but I did indicate in a conversation earlier this week with city staff and city council that I'm not supportive of this proposal, mostly for the reason that it's a dramatic change and it's a big departure from the commitment and the fidelity and really holding as a priority the real value that neighborhood revitalization, neighborhood engagement provides to the city in terms of building our social infrastructure, building a quality of life that's unique in this country, and it's happening far, far too quickly. And it needs to engage members of the community, it needs to engage the delegation. I don't fully understand the proposal. I've gotten a few briefings of it, and that's part of the problem. I don't fully understand it. It's going to require permissive legislation that's going to require the support of the delegation. I also disagree a little bit with Joe, though. I have to tell you that when folks say that there's a dim view of NRP at the legislature across the state by folks who would not necessarily be our friends, that claim is true. It's very accurate, and it's not Democrat versus Republicans. It's a lot of folks outside of Minnesota who don't understand what NRP is, the value that it delivers to Minneapolis, and then by extension, the value that it delivers to the rest of the state when Minneapolis thrives and succeeds. And I think we have dodged a couple of bullets a couple of times in an effort to dismantle and really undermine NRP at the legislature. So I don't think Greg Davids is going to be amenable and friendly to the continuation of NRP when we see money sitting there and property tax increases of the type. So we've got a political job on our hands as a legislature, but certainly we've got a larger political job within Minneapolis to do as well.
Either of you want to go next, or kind of your reaction?
I think some of the things have been said. I sense the polarization bothers me. This idea that, we start to indict each other. We can do that. And we can kind of say, well, here's the problem, and we can name names and people and certain situations. And as much as we can sit here and kind of do that, they can kind of do the same thing. I think that what Senator Dibble said is what I'm more worried about, is that one of the things that we say as Democrats in the legislature is that the Republican stance on taxes raises property tax. One of the things that they say is, no, you don't have to raise property tax, you just have to manage your budget better, right? I'm just telling you what they say. So what I think that we have to be cognizant of is how do we figure out how to work through these issues and at the same time not get to a point in which the Republicans who don't want to raise income tax progressively, and then when we say, well, you're going to raise property tax, they say, no, that there's property tax sitting there for your amenities, your neighborhoods and things of that nature. They don't understand kind of the value, and nor do they really want to look to figure that out. So I just kind of want to put that on the backdrop as a new member to the legislature, being my second time being elected, what I've heard over and over again and what that message is. I will also say that I think that the last minute Ways and Means markup proposal on something as monumental as this is appalling. That we should have a conversation, that everybody here has the capacity and others within our community to really start to understand what are the issues that we're facing. And to do it in the 11th hour is appalling, and there is somewhat of a track record of that. So many might remember last year, Representative Champion and I came down to the City Council when there was some movement on the Civil Rights Department and what they wanted to do and mark up last year at the end of the year. So I think that we have to work on that issue. That being said, I will also say, and I'm not saying it because Elizabeth is here, Elizabeth did call. And as chair of the IGR and as one of the co-chairs of the House Minneapolis delegation, she did call Councilmember Schiff, and I wish he was here. He did call as well. So folks have kind of called, but the last minute nature of it has not really allowed us to really kind of have this kind of conversation that we should be having. And so ultimately, we just choose a side. And so, but what I have heard when I've called staff in others' offices as I've tried to figure out what was going on, is they said that there also is a lot of our neighbors are calling about the property tax hike. And often the same folks that are calling about the property tax hike are often saying, but don't mess around with my neighborhood organization's money and what we need to do in our community. And so I just want to acknowledge that. Let me put out, because I want you to know where I'm going. I don't support this proposal. I don't support the inequities. I don't support the last minute nature of it. I don't support that we aren't fully, we haven't fully vetted these proposals, that it's very fluid. What I've heard on Wednesday was different than what happened on Friday, which may be different what happens on Monday. And then out of that, we have to figure out what the legislative kind of session looks like and what their budget is going to look like and what the governor's budget. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we have to look at, and I think that it is extremely disrespectful to kind of throw in the middle of the night kind of a proposal that fundamentally changes how we've lived our life in these communities for the last 20 years. And so I think that that is important. And so with that being said, I think a call to action is necessary, but I also think that as we kind of call to action, all of us don't get caught in this situation and where we look irresponsible because all we care about is this. And there's all these other issues that we have to talk about. So what happens as we start to move forward and LGA gets zeroed out and we have to figure out how to deal with our first responders, right? How do we deal with that message? How do you guys deal with that? How do we work together to make sure that we can accomplish both of those goals? The other thing, and I venture and I tip my toe in this a little bit, especially as I look to the young lady that has come from Harrison and we look at these maps, we have to also kind of look at what was the natural development of these plans and then kind of what happened along the way that some neighborhoods were able to spend their money, some neighborhoods weren't. And how do we kind of figure out kind of how do we deal with that? Because part of the issue, I know that I was doing a phase 2 plan in Powderhorn, I don't know, 01 or 02 or something like maybe 02, 03, right? And so that, and a lot of things have happened in between legislatively, also neighborhoods falling apart, reforming. And so let's make sure that we start to understand kind of how does that happen? What's the best possible use for the money? And frankly, and I know we have these now 2 neighborhood organizations and the inefficiencies there, but how do we support neighborhoods to make sure that they get on track and those dollars go to the folks that need them the most, right? And how do we do that now? And why do we have so much money that has been allocated but hasn't been used? And when you look at that, they are distressed neighborhoods that have had that. So the neighborhoods that need the money the most are the ones that are slowest to get the money. So I just want to say that in that instance, and I'm not trying to blame anybody, but I just want to kind of make sure that we understand the full context of what we're talking about. The last thing that I will say is look around the room, right? And how do we organize and how we intentionally organize? Because as we come forward to say, here are some of the folks that didn't get the money and they're in the most distressed neighborhoods. I'd like to see those folks be part of this solution and make sure that we're doing the outreach to those communities to make sure that they're here and that they're part of it. Otherwise, we get in a situation where we're kind of telling them what to do. So I want to hear their voices as well, and that often we get in these rooms, and I've been doing this a long time. And when we get in those rooms, you know, Bob Miller will tell you, and Debbie and others, when this first blew up, we had a big, you know, when RT and Sharon first ran against each other, we had a big a debate, and we facilitated that conversation, and promises were made. But I also want to make sure that as we're having these conversations, we're also making sure that we're bringing everybody in the room that's going to be affected. Otherwise, you end up with...
Harold gave me a fast tutorial of this house. Look at this incredibly beautiful house, set of houses in this neighborhood, done with NRP funding. Look at what it's returned on that investment. I don't know if Justin's here. Yeah, there you are, from Como. I mean, one of the things which the legislature ought to look at is the neighborhood partnership that he's managed to negotiate, that that stopped the confrontation between the neighborhood and an environmental group to the benefit of both of those. And these are the stories that need to come out and need to get to the legislature. So they just don't think it's kind of a pie that the city has and no one else has. But we clearly, and we're going to have to be the only thing that we now have, we need to be very careful about how we proceed in the legislature. And any division on the Minneapolis scene is going to be used by our enemies, who are frankly in control. So we yet don't know. I don't know about the Senate. I know none of us know what committees we're on in the House. I don't even think we know.
We do.
We do know.
Oh, okay.
Which is
We do.
Friday was released.
Okay. Well, we don't have, so the House members don't. I don't even think we know the majority members on those committees yet. And I've worked with Greg Davids when he was in the majority before, and he's kind of, for a Republican in a rural district, he's kind of a populist. We passed one of the most incredible, one of the first bills in the country outlawing genetic discrimination in employment, which was, him writing the bill and him taking it through his committee and just beating people down on the House floor when they tried to say we shouldn't get into this. So, that committee might be more helpful to us than we think. But
Would you like to go last?
But great. My name's Marion Green. I'm a representative-elect from District 60A, which is half of Senator Dibble's district over in the southwest Minneapolis. And I don't have a lot to say because I'm new. I'm here to listen and learn. But I will say that I'm passionate about Minneapolis. That's one of the things that I talked about a lot in my campaign, is feeling like Minneapolis really offers the state a lot. And so we need to kind of approach carefully what we do in order to keep the economic health of the city going. So I'm really here to listen and learn. Thank you for organizing this.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
One thing that I missed, and that was during the conversation at City Hall, there were some crazy statements that the Republicans could take this money away from us. I checked with Tom Bach, and they have absolutely no precedent. It'd be like taking the money from the city of Minneapolis, because they can't do it. They have no authority to do that. So let's get that off the table right away. Money is not going away to the Republican Party. It can't be done. So.
Thank you, Amy. And before we open, I just would like to conclude, and then you can take some questions. From our perspective, from my perspective as the chair of the Minneapolis delegation in the Senate, I just would like to conclude by saying that I am absolutely devoted to this transparent process, that I appreciated the call from the neighborhood associations, and that I believe very strongly that my role needs to be to convene and bring you together so that you know what is going on and what is that we have been asked to do. We represent you, obviously, we represent your interest. My commitment to you as a chair is that I will work with my peers, my co-chair, Jeff Hayden in the House. Jeff and I have talked about how to create opportunities so that we can come together. What is coming is tough. We need to be proactive. We will be generating a memo to all members about the need to let the public know about who are the members in those committees, what will be our responsibility in terms of protecting our city and our neighborhoods and our schools. What we know is coming is that we are going to have to face some tremendous cuts to schools. A lot of proposals are moving forward already to consolidate a lot of funding that will be very detrimental, cuts that are detrimental to the Minneapolis School District, a lot of proposals that are detrimental to healthcare, HCMC, and some legacy funds proposals that will directly impact our parks. That's what I have heard. So what I am promising to you as our communities and our constituents is that I will be listening to you, opening opportunities for conversations so that we can be proponents and work together on facing these challenging times that are coming. You will know who are the members of the different committees and how we're going to split the work in the Senate and the House to take responsibility for these issues. Obviously, we're not going to be in all committees. Most of us in the Senate are right now assigned to 3 specific committees. You will know exactly who is in those committees, and we're going to rely very strongly on our peers because we cannot be everywhere to help us shape the future policies that are being proposed, and we will be making sure that you know about these proposals and how they will affect Minneapolis. So thank you very much. Thank you.
So, I just have to ask before you go, will any of you be carrying this legislation forward? If this comes, this request.
We haven't seen anything yet. I mean, we've seen broad parameters, we haven't seen if it comes.
If it comes, do you see taking it forward?
I try to never take out tax bills.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. I know this is a hard day to get here, and I can't believe that this room is as filled as it is. You know, the next thing we definitely... Yes,
Okay.
Annie.
I have 2 hats. So first of all, I want to address as a park board, and the park board is in the same position as everybody else. There's no money, and we could be devastated also by LGA cuts. But the positive side reason I wanted to address you is that the parks have been one of the benefactors of the NRP. Many of you have put your dollars into these parks. So when one of you suggested, when are we going to talk about the accomplishments and write the list of all the things NRP has done, parks are right up there at the top. And there's still quite a few neighborhoods that have their money, and I would suspect that some more would come to parks and those kinds of things. So I just wanted you to know that Liz and I are here. Liz does work on the budget and admin and finance, and we're very, very interested in how this goes also. Now I'm going to put on my neighborhood hat. I work for a neighborhood group, and I work in one of the yellow neighborhoods, and I live in another one. When Maren talked about the north side, there's also Phyllis Central in the middle part of the south. But I'm going to take off that hat. I believe, and I was the co-chair of the dream team that set this up 20 years ago. So this is kind of like my baby. It keeps getting these we keep going to the bathroom, getting rinsed off. But this isn't the first time that they've attacked us. But I think this time they're for real. They're not messing around. And I want to submit, this is an Annie Young thing, so don't believe it's any of my hats. It's about power and control. It's not just the tax cuts, Because everybody across the board is going to hurt from the tax cuts, no matter what the outcome is. But when we talk about being ambushed, the ambush side is about power and control.
Thanks, Amy. So now what can we do? If you look on your agenda, there is, a call to action, and I hope that every person in this room, we have until tomorrow night to change some minds downtown. So first of all, before everyone leaves, I'm sure if you don't have a cell phone in your hand, that you can borrow your neighbors. I would like for every person in this room to contact their council person or others that they know before they leave and tell them how this is going to affect their neighborhood. Bob?
Amy, and with regards to that, I think it's really important for everybody to recognize that this is not just about neighborhoods. You are all taxpayers. And frankly, the way this is being cast is it's taxpayers against neighborhoods. That's not the case. And when you contact your council member, make sure that you emphasize to them that you are a taxpayer. There are a lot of other options. What is most appalling about this particular proposal to me, and I'm not going to put on my NRP hat, I'll put on my hat as a public servant for 40 years, is that there has been no consideration of alternatives. There has been no discussion of a long-term plan for what the city's going to do. The mayor's budget includes tax increases of 6.5% this year, but 6.7% next year, 6% the year after that, 5.5% the year after that, and 4.5% the year after that. That will make 14 straight years of tax increases that are at least twice the rate of inflation. And nobody complains about this? And here's the point. NRP has been an investment program. We have actually returned money. It has been the growth of the tax base. It's been the fact that we've done more than 15,000 home improvement loans to people who other people don't give loans to. And we have probably a lower default rate than any bank or any other program in the country. We have invested in small businesses. We have put streets back into place. Look at Franklin Avenue. Look at Lake Street. Look at Nicollet Avenue. Look at all the small businesses that have been helping us. This is a problem because it is a short-term solution and it needs to be changed. NRP is going to go away. That is a given. Our resources stopped in 2009. There is no more property tax money going into NRP. What neighborhoods have been doing now is living off of the program income that they've invested, the returns off of the good things that they have been doing so that they could continue to do them. It is important for you as neighborhood residents not to lose sight of those things. And you are taxpayers in this city. You have a commitment to this city. The volunteer hours that are going to be lost as these neighborhoods start to go under is going to hurt this city for generations, not just for a couple of years. And the worst part about it is we're going to have an increase in the distrust and the animosity between the government and the very residents who are the people who are supposed to be governed by them. We've got to get past this. And I really am concerned about that. So when you're contacting your council members, make sure that those are some of the points that you're looking at and that you emphasize the fact you live in this community, you pay taxes in it, and you are being hurt by this action.
There's a lot of people who'd like to speak. So I'm going to quickly get through what you can do. I want to make sure I have a chance to say that. We're going to officially adjourn. There's a lot of additional comments that I know people want to make. So let's continue the dialogue. We have until 4 o'clock. Does anyone have the time?
3:23.
Okay, so we can continue this discussion afterwards. So one, every person in here, can you please commit to calling your council members? The numbers are up there and on your agenda before you leave this room.
Their office numbers. So you're going to be leaving.
You can leave a message. The other one is there is a petition going around. If you have not signed that petition, please go to the web address on your agenda and do so. We also really need to be getting through not just us as leaders in our communities, but to all of the people who live in our neighborhoods. So commit to calling people through your databases at your neighborhood organizations, sending out your emails, and getting other people to do the same. We also need to be at the meeting tomorrow night when this is going to be discussed. It's going to be at 6:05 at City Hall. If you need a ride, I would be happy to pick someone up. So please talk to one another. We need to get people down there as well. So now, this woman here, who I'm not sure your name, has asked to read something.
I'm Laura Jean. I'm from the Whittier neighborhood. I serve on the board of directors over there. I wrote an editorial piece I'd like to read while we have some of our legislators here. And this is wearing my neighborhood and resident hat. In response to complaints about property taxes, the Minneapolis Mayor and City Council are planning to raid the remaining NRP funds. It's hard to imagine city leaders with eye patches and hooks. Our elected officials are supposed to protect us from piracy, not perpetrate it. These funds have already been allocated to neighborhoods based on need as part of the Neighborhood Revitalization Program. 20 years ago, NRP was born out of a need to invest in our city's aging neighborhoods. It is easy to argue NRP is the single best thing Minneapolis has ever done. Neighborhoods like mine turned it into solid returns. The wild successes of the program can be seen from corner to corner across town. Everything from building and improving schools, community centers, libraries, and parks, to providing musical instruments and lessons to kids who could not otherwise afford them, to reducing crime and providing public art, to loans that help businesses and homeowners restore, build, and invest in our communities. My friends and I joke about what a small town this city is. Everyone knows everyone. We are all connected. It is because of NRP that I have come to know many of my neighbors and am committed to staying in the vibrant inner city. I will stay and fight to keep the gains, the revitalization that NRP enabled in my neighborhood. Nobody likes paying property taxes, and there is nothing fair about this regressive tax. We can either cut the budget and services, or we can find a way to come up with the money. I value the level of services we receive in Minneapolis, and I do not want that to change. Minneapolis leaders should be doing just that, leading. Their money grab of the remaining already allocated NRP funds is a one-time stunt that will do nothing long-term to help the city's budget woes. And it will mean neighborhood organizations already scrambling to find solutions to remain financially viable may have to simply close their doors instead. With the forced sunsetting of NRP and its lackluster, underfunded replacement, NCR, much trust has been lost in our city leaders. Leaders who continue to play dirty politics, ambushing us in the final days before the city budget is approved in hopes of stealing the last handful of beans. These NRP funds rightfully belong to our neighborhood. It's true that desperate times lead to piracy, but when the pirates are our elected officials, we all pay more than higher taxes for their lack of vision and leadership.